it's me, Nikki. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with my June wrap-up. I just finished my last book. Sorry for the noise. So I thought I would talk about them first. So I'll start with what I just finished. I finished The Mysterious Affair at Styles. It is the first in the Hercule Poirot series. It has lovely Hastings, who's a big old dummy. He thinks he's smart, but he's not as smart as Poirot. Because at the end, Poirot is explaining everything, and he goes, "Oh, didn't you notice this? And didn't you notice that?" And Hastings is like, "No, I didn't." And then he's like, "You let me come to this conclusion." And he goes, "I gave you the clues. It's not my fault you didn't do it." So since this is the first book, it's good. It is a Hercule Poirot, Agatha Christie, but it is a little bumpy. Like, the last one I read, I think I talked about, was The Murder on the Orient Express, and there was a clue in the book that made you figure something out, and I don't think there's any clue where the reader could have figured out who done it. Like, I literally just finished it a couple minutes ago. Like anything, like, I don't know. I don't think there is. Like, there's a clue about, like, oh, he has, like, a beard, and, you know, the face is obscured, so it could have been anyone, but I don't know, until you know who the bad guy is, if you could have figured that bit out on your own. And, it's also a bit, I don't want to say, like, Sherlock Holmesy, but it's like that in the way that it's from Hastings' point of view. Like, Watson wrote all the things. It's like that. So there is that. So you don't really get into Poirot. I don't know if you got into Poirot's head. But you know what I mean? Like, you're sort of, like, apart from Poirot. Because Hastings, you're not with him all the time like you were on Murder on the Orient Express. You're with Hastings all the time, which is fine. Hastings is a big old dum-dum, and you gotta love him. If any woman he falls in love with, and he goes, "Oh yes, they love me too." And it's like, bro, chill out. It is set during World War One. Hastings, I believe, is injured, and he comes home that way. Poirot is a refugee. He's near Styles Court, with a group of other Belgians. So, it also has Inspector Japp, James Japp, or as this made me laugh. Poirot called him Jimmy Japp. I'm like, nobody ever calls him Jimmy Japp. Oh gosh. Yeah, it was good. I mean, she would get better. But, you know, for a first, I couldn't write a mystery. So, like, I only know who did it on Murder on the Orient Express because I've watched the thing. So, yeah, I quite enjoyed it. It was on audiobook. I have a physical copy somewhere, but I think it's out in my garage. I do want to look at my physical copy because apparently, I don't know if it's all physical copies, but one of the first ones has diagrams of, like, the house and how everything is situated. You know I love me a map. Either of a country or a city. So yes, I have to go check that out. But I think in a review somebody said don't start with this one, but I think you could. You know, it's not horrible to start. It's just, you know, it's just the start of a wonderful relationship, if you will. And then I read Spellbound. So this one was a romance, because that was the prompt. And then the reason I read Mysterious Ferret Styles is because it had to be shorter than the last book you read, and it couldn't be a book you read before. So this is 336, and I think Poirot was like 100, 200-ish pages, so that's why. But yes, this is Spellbound, the third F.T. Lukens book I have read. I quite enjoyed it. I've got one more book to read, and I hope I enjoy that as well. But this is about Edison Rooker, who is not magical, but he wants to be part of that world again. His grandmother, who was magical, passed away, and essentially the wizard police were like, no, bro, you gotta leave. And that sucks for him. So he goes to work for Antonia Hex, who is a supremely powerful witch. I imagined her like a Scarlet Witch, either the movie or the comic books. She's terrifying. And the wrong person to fuck with, basically. And he's a genius, because he's like 16 or 17. And he made a device where he can see ley lines, which he shouldn't have, because non-magical. He meets Sun, his romance, who is a rival apprentice. Not with Antonia, but with Fable, I believe their name is. And so Sun goes by they, them. My apologies if I misgendered them. And essentially, Rook is just going along doing his thing, and then the fucking magic cops come along and ruin everything. Fucking cops. So, yeah, it's just a short little queer novel, and I enjoyed it. I will say, I think I brought this up in a couple other things, on the other two reviews, at least in Otherworldly. There are repetitions. Rook says cool or nice a lot. And that's the only thing. And I don't know if I said this before, but when I was reading it, it reads like fanfic, and not in a bad way. But that's just what it reads like to me, because sometimes, like in a TV show or a movie, they have like their catchphrase, Avengers Assemble, I am Iron Man, etc., etc. So that just seems to be like the catchphrase that they repeat. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I liked it. That's a gift. That's a gift. Why do I still have it in the box? Unrelated, but it's Eeyore. It's probably safer in the box, so I'll keep it in the box and just do that. So those were the books I read for all the prompts, and now we will go to the books I read for the sightseeing stuff. So, okay, yes, the first book I read for the sightseeing was a book with a face on the cover, and I read Lady Killers, Deadly Women Throughout History. Let's see. They mostly talked about, I think the latest was Nanny Doss, who was like in the, where was she? She was in the 50s. She died in 65. So she's as far as the author goes. So there's no like Eileen Wuornos or anything. They obviously talk about Elizabeth Bathory, and there was somebody else too. It's right there on the tip of my tongue. There was a group of them in the 1800s. It was a mom and a dad and a brother and a sister, maybe. And people would come in, they had like a lodging, and then they would get killed and then they all left. And they're kind of famous, but I can't remember their name. And they talked about all of them, but the youngest sister, was essentially like the pretty one who spoke English and sort of lured everybody in. Who else did they talk about? Nanny Doss, I think I heard of. She was a poisoner, I believe. Elizabeth Bathory was probably the most famous one, and she allegedly did what she did, and maybe she did it, maybe she didn't, but a lot of people think nowadays she was rich and they wanted her land and her castle, so make up a story about her. And Marianne Cotton was a poisoner. And there's Daria Saltykov, a Russian woman who had crimes similar to Elizabeth Bathory. I can't... Those are the 4 on the front page. I can't remember who else they talked about. They talked about a lot. So, I thought it was interesting. Because you don't hear a lot about... or if you do hear about it, it's obviously through a male lens. So... let me see if the reviews say anything about who else. Well, I would just check it out if you like nonfiction about like history, about like that kind of stuff. I think I've said this before. If I'm gonna read about killers of any genre, lady or otherwise, I don't like to go past like the 1950s. I prefer them to be dead by that point, because then my brain goes places. I have a very active imagination. Okay, I talked about those. Yes, I did. Okay. Oh, I also read The Art of War by Sun Tzu. I don't think that was a prompt. I just read it because it was short. So a book with a color in the title. Oh, I know that one. It's right here. This is the last in the series. It is Red Skull, the Chaos Engine Trilogy, Book 3. So, what's happened was, there's the Cosmic Cube, which is different than the thing in the Marvel movies. I know that much. Doctor Doom was the first guy. Magneto was the second guy, and now Red Skull. And essentially, each of them get their hands on it and shape the universe to their will. Unfortunately, it kills you while you do it. So, I think maybe Doom and Magneto just did Earth, whereas Red Skull does the universe. And he's obviously the biggest dickhead out of the 3 of them. He's a fucking Nazi, for Christ's sake. So there's a lot of that Nazism in here, and it's really angering because of the current shithole we're living in. Essentially, there are no mutants, or if there are, they're like kind of what Hitler did. Like, if you were gay, you couldn't be gay, and then you just had to hide it. That kind of thing is happening. Or they're used as tools. Rogue is used as a torture device, essentially. The others are manacled, so they have power suppressants, Magneto in particular, or just that kind of stuff. Charles Xavier is not great in this. There is torture Rogue does it unwillingly. Jean does get tortured. Magneto, I learned just before I read this, has sort of telepathic powers, and then he uses those sort of telepathic powers on Logan. So that's a whole thing. And then, like, all the other people that they were in the other two books come together, and it's a whole thing, and there's a really great hero at the end. And then there's also stuff happening on the space station. It's just, there's a lot happening, and it all comes together, and it's all very lovely, and I liked it. Where is the space station? I don't think it's the... There's a lady in space that Xavier marries. I don't think it's those people. I can't remember their name. It might be those people. I don't know. It has something to do with Merlin and his daughter, and they're like... It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing which I didn't even know about until I read this book and the second book, so I'm not up to date on that. But yeah, you know, I liked it. It was interesting to see, like, they beat Doctor Doom in the first one, and then it fails, and they beat Magneto in the second one, and then it fails, and then it's Red Skull, and you're like, oh my god, now they have to start all over again, because, like, their mind gets wiped of everything, and you're just like, how are they going to do it now? So I thought it worked out really well in the end, but I did get rid of the other two, and I am going to get rid of that one. I'll have to pare down. A book written by a BIPOC author. That is, oh gosh, The Silvered Serpents by Mashani Chokshi, which is the second in the something series. Excuse me. The Gilded Wolves. So it takes place in Paris. But I think it's before World War One. But it's like an alternate history type of thing. And they go from Paris to Russia. Hence this. And it carries on from the first book. And a thing has happened in that first book, and everybody is sad about it and sort of drifted apart. And Severin brings them all together to find this... it's a MacGuffin. They're all MacGuffins, let's be honest. It has a name, but it's a MacGuffin. Because he wants to become a god and fix things and make sure his friends can never get hurt again, but he's like a dickhead about it. So it's not going great for him. And then our other main character, Lila? I think is how you sound that. She has to pretend to be Severin's partner when they actually do love each other. But he's being a dickhead, and she's like, why are you being a dickhead? And he's like, I don't try. You know, it's a whole thing. They don't actually communicate. Because of what happened. Severin doesn't want to tell anybody anything, so he has all these plans and nobody knows anything, which comes back to bite him at the end because something happens. Obviously it's a book, something should happen. And he leaves a note for Lila, and she essentially breaks it and doesn't read it. So the things that he'd done up until that point she doesn't know about. And that's going to come back to bite him and bite them both in the end. So yeah, and there's like, they're looking for the MacGuffin, and I can't remember his aunt is there, and Severance doesn't talk to his aunt because that's a whole thing as well. Um, what else? And there's like a different society trying to hunt them down because of the MacGuffin. And then a bad guy shows up, and you think it's one person, and you're like, oh shit, it's not. And then there's a whole thing between Zofia and Enrique, and who's the other fella whose name I've already forgotten. Hypnos. I don't think that's his real name. I can't remember if they gave his real name, but there's like a whole love triangle there, which I think gets resolved in a perfect way in the third one, i.e. not a love triangle. And I liked it. I liked the setting a lot. They're in like an icy castle, essentially. And there's ice animals, and they move, and it's kind of freaky, and everything is like a puzzle to solve, and there's like ancient writings and ancient dealings with other people, and you're like, what the hell is happening? Sometimes I think some of the things, like I said before, could be solved with just, talking to each other, but they are young, so, I don't think they're in their 20s, maybe Severin and Lila are in their 20s, and everybody else is vaguely younger, so, and then Severin does the thing, like I said, and it's not gonna go well for him in the third one. I hope it does, but I don't think it will. So yeah, the setting was really great, and there's little pictures like that, and some of the characters you kind of did want to punch. Not our main characters, but a couple of the others you were like, really? Do you have to be here? I would rather you not. Let me find the other one. Oh, and then I might have just read that for funsies. I read a book with a map on the inside, which is King's Dragon by Kate Elliott. This is part of a series, which I shan't be finishing, because apparently the series gets worse as it goes on, and I'm not here for that, and a lot of them are chunkers like this. However, this book was very good. I quite enjoyed it. It's set in fantasy world, obviously, but it takes inspiration from our world. Like, there's a lot of, like, I just saw something on the fantasy Reddit about like religion in fantasy, and this has a lot of religion in fantasy. But then there's also magic, like elves and I can't remember what they call them, but they look they're like scaly. They sort of look like fish people, but that's not the right. No, they call them something, and I can't remember what it is now. It starts with an E. Maybe it's an Ica. Eika. And they come from the north, so they're kind of like your Vikings. This is like England and France type of thing going on as well. There's a church, but there's two main characters and then two other characters who get little. We have Elaine and Lyath. And then it's Lyath's friend Hannah. And I've forgotten the other lady's name. She's like a nun type. Where is it? No, not him. I literally can't find it. It starts with an R. And they're both important characters to their specific parts, but it's mainly about Elaine and Lyath. Elaine is a foundling, essentially. His mother died at birth, and he was raised by his adoptive father, so he doesn't know his real father. And he's going to be given to the church, but he sees a vision of the Lady of Battles. Women are very important in this. Where is that? The Margraves and Dukes don't have to be men. There's a lot of women in charge. The church is run by women, so that's amazing, actually. So the Lady of Battles goes, you can't come to be a church, you gotta go. So he goes and he does great things. He goes to the Count Lavestein's household, and the Count has a reputation. Well, his hounds have a reputation. Apparently the Count's grandfather or great-grandfather, like, made a deal with the devil or whatever. Demons, who knows. And so he's got these hounds, and literally only people of the bloodline can control the hounds. And then everybody goes, why do they like Elaine? Because they are friends. They don't try to attack him or anything, and they listen to him, and everybody goes, so, you know. But just because. And then the Count goes crazy, and Elaine is like, I'm just gonna take care of the dogs while I try to sort things out. There's Lyath, who lives in a little village with her father, who is, I think he's murdered, but they just said he died of old age. And he has magic books, and he has taught them to Lyath, and the horrible man, Hugh, wants that knowledge. So we'll come back to that. But then she goes and joins the Eagles, which are simply the messengers for the king and scouts. And there she meets San Gallant, who is the king's son, bastard son. That's important. His mother is an elf. And Henry really wants him to be the king, the next king, but because he's a bastard, he can't. That is important to the story, I swear. Henry has other children with his lawful wife, and there's a whole thing. He has a sister, Henry has a sister who tries to... What's her name? Her name's Sabella. She tries to throw a coup, because what happens is both the heirs go off and see if they can have a baby. And whoever has a baby first, because you're fertile, means you're good king? Not sure how that equates, but whatever. Henry has his child first, even though he's second. The original, their father's second son. And then later Sabella has a daughter, and is like, well, that means I'm queen. So that happened. And Sangalan is Henry's child in that matter. And you do meet Henry's other children, who are also generals, or, important in his court. You meet a lot. There's a lot of characters, even though you only get a couple point of views. There's a lot of characters, and there's a lot. There's a lot. So, but I did like it. Nobody gets left out. Just because there are a lot of characters, you see a lot of Elaine, and you can see a lot of Lias, and everybody. Everybody's important in their own little ways. But yeah, I like that. And then there's Hannah, Lias' best friend, who also joins the Eagles. And she knows Lias' secret about the magic books and wants to protect her. And then there's Hugh, who is another important character, but he's a son of a bitch. I dislike him, and one reason is he does not, from what I have seen of the other reviews, he does not get his comeuppance for what he does to Lias in this. And quite frankly, I don't like that. Rosvita, that's the other person's name. I finally found it. And she is with the King Henry character quite a bit. So Hugh is a piece of shit. He pretends to be friends with Lias' father to get all of his magic books. He is the bastard son of one of the Margraves, I believe. And she, his mother, put him into the church. Because that's kind of what you did in medieval times if you had more than one. Like, if you had enough sons or enough daughters, you just put them in the church. Or if you had a bastard child, you put him in the church. So, Hugh says that Lias and her father owe him money. May or may not be true. So they sell everything in her house. And she's in, like, debtor's prison. And it's not enough to cover it. Shockingly. So Hugh takes Lias as a slave. And he wants the book. That's all he wants. So he abuses her. He gaslights her. He does physically abuse her. And he rapes her. She, like, sort of detaches herself, so she isn't even quite sure. She knows they get on the bed. She gives in because he's just worn her down. And she gives in to what he wants. But she disassociates and she's on the bed. She goes, we lie down, stuff happens. And then once he does that, he then doesn't let her see any of her friends in the village, particularly Hannah or her family, Hannah's family, which, like, have really welcomed her. And then even the two servants he has, he doesn't let her see them. She has to, like, stay in this room or be with him at all times. She has really bad PTSD, which, so if that's triggering, any of that is triggering to you, don't read this. But also, he beats her so badly she miscarriages, and that is essentially what makes everybody go, you know what? No, we're not going to let this continue. And then the Eagles show up and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, that's mostly in the front part. That's a lot of Lias' point of view until the Eagles show up. And it's really hard to read, and it's really hard to get through, even for me, who's not experienced any of that. So, if you have, I don't know. I wouldn't recommend that, probably. And so I'm really upset he doesn't get his comeuppance. But other than that, it's a good book. There is a epilogue sort of cliffhanger, but I don't want to continue it unless Hugh dies, so, and he doesn't die. But you know what? If you like what I talk about in that whole babble, check it out. That was a lot of babbling. I apologize. And then, I read One Piece. This wasn't for a prompt. I thought it was, but it wasn't. And this is volumes 103 to 105. spoilers, I guess, for what happens. And they're still in Wano. This is the end of the Wano arc and the beginning of the other one. I can't remember what it's called. Is it the last arc? Maybe the last one. Chapters and volumes. Yes, and so that's the final saga. So it's the beginning of the Egghead arc, which I can't wait to read. But I loved this one. I love all of One Piece. Obviously, it's one of my favorite manga, and it's just a continuation of what's been happening. And once again, Luffy and the crew, like, this is not a spoiler, once again they win the day and the big bad goes down in the end. But the getting there is what's the cool part. There are just some sections. Momosuke has some two or three great moments. Luffy, of course, has a fantastic moment. I love it. Everybody gets what they deserve, and you also have your little continuations of the stories on the covers. So, yes, start One Piece. Oops, spoilers. I forgot to cover it. Start One Piece if you haven't. There's even a One Piece, which is the anime, but cut out all the filler and cut out like unnecessary bits of scenes. But that's the rest of what I read in June. Oh my gosh, it was a pretty good reading month. I quite liked it. I did DNF a couple books, so that was good, but I didn't talk about those because I don't care. But yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks for listening to me babble. Even if I made no sense, I tried, but sometimes what goes in my head doesn't articulate. So, yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you're having a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.